Now we're going to turn to the fast evolving world of cybersecurity, and our guest is Matthieu of Barco, and we're so lucky to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
How's the show going for you? I feel like I think you said it's like quite a flying visit for you this year.
It's a flying visit for me, but the booth is packed. We have a couple of multiple rooms or booths, let's say already. A couple of familiar faces, but also a lot of new ones. So again, proves to be a very fruitful ISE.
Wonderful.
Excellent. That's like the perfect balance. Familiar, new, that's what we like to provide. Yep. That's great. That's okay, so let's go into the question. So cybersecurity used to be seen as an IT issue. What's changed that makes it a board level commercial concern today?
That's a very good question to crack it open or to start. So first of all, we've seen over the years that everything becomes a lot more connected. And when I say connected, I don't just mean cloud connected, I also mean in the back end, the data, the applications, the integrations that become connected. By doing so, you increase basically your attack vector, so the surface that can be attacked, but also the impact of the attack. So coming back to that, what we've seen is that over the years, the incidents have grown from isolated smaller incidents towards incidents that basically stop or can halt business operations, because everything is a lot more connected and dependent on each other from a data level. So adding to that, we have regulatory pressure, like the NIS2 and the CRA things that come into play. And those things basically say, if you're not ready for cybersecurity as such, then that's an accountability for the boardroom or for board level executives. So those are the two reasons why cybersecurity is not just an IT issue, it's a board level discussion because of, one, the business impact, and on the second hand, the business accountability if you fail to meet the ends on security, cybersecurity.
And I wanted to touch on that regulatory pressure that you were mentioning. And we know that cybersecurity has come a long way, but with all of these new regulations and legislations in the mix, I know it can be a bit confusing. So from your perspective, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that are out there in terms of cybersecurity that you're seeing now in 2026?
Yeah, so as you rightfully say, there's a lot of regulation and cybersecurity certifications that are going on. Especially in Europe, we have the NIS2 and the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act. But first of all, it's safe to say that compliance does not necessarily mean security. It means that it's a minimum requirement that you need to abide to, let's say. But then if you look a lot deeper into risk-based assessments and controls that you need to do, or the software development life cycles, those things take it up a notch. And that's exactly where you need to be fully security, let's say, up to the risk level or the risk posture that you're willing to take as a company, as an end-user company. So what we've also seen is that it's not just about if I'm going to be targeted, it's when you're going to be targeted. So in order to make sure that you're ready for that, it's good that you have a, let's say, security muscle already built up. So as soon as an incident kicks in, that you can rely on that muscle memory, if you will, that you have the correct processes and the products in place to make sure that you don't end up into business operations that are being halted, stopped, or even worse impact than that.
So there's also there's quite a few different elements that you need to have all balanced in order to sort of create that one sort of product achievement. And it's interesting, I think, to sometimes consider how you balance usability with speed to market and security without compromising one for the other. How would you approach that?
So how we approach that in Barco is, if you look at the cost of a bug, not necessarily security bug, but a normal bug, that goes up tremendously if you solve it all the way in the beginning in the development phase, as opposed to when it's already in the field. So those costs go up exponentially. And the same is true, even more so, for a security vulnerability. So the idea is, one, as soon as you see it in the development and in your testing, fix it, be done with it. In the highly unlikely case that something might slip into the field, then of course you need to fix it. And then we base ourselves upon a risk-based analysis. So you look at the issue or the incident, the vulnerability you have before you, let's say, and then you look at your risk-based analysis that you have, and then you try to close it up until where the level is acceptable from a risk perception or from a risk perspective, and then you have patched that issue. So that makes sure that you don't necessarily need to close everything down up into the 100% closed. You just make sure that it's aligned with the risk level that you're comfortable with as a vendor, but also as an end user, and that also increases your speed to market. That's the first element. The second element is, if you build software, all of your software components are, your software is built with multiple components, and you need those components to be up to date from a feature perspective, but also from a security perspective. And if you fail to do so, and let's say it takes a year or 2 years until you bump a software component to the new version, then you're going to suffer from that on a functional level, but also on a security level. So you need to make sure that these things are baked into your day-to-day routine, R&D routine, not just thinking about features, but also about the maintenance, and then especially closing down security issues in your product.
Wow, so making sure that everything's secure is very multifaceted. There's so many moving components. It's a lot, it sounds like.
It is.
And so, Barco, I know you guys have mentioned shared responsibility. I'd love if you can define that a little bit for our audience, and how should everything kind of be divided, that responsibility, when it comes to integrators or your partners or your end users. So if you could just speak a little to that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So basically, if we split it up, like you say, we have the vendors, in this case Barco, then we have integrators and end users. As a vendor, to put it very high level, we secure the product, the integrator secures the implementation, and then the end user secures the operations. And if we just zoom in a bit more on all those three, let's say the vendor secures the product, that's up to us. We need to make sure that we can provide security patches, that we provide the security features, that we provide something like an SBOM, a software bill of material, where we list all the components I previously talked about, but also with their version number. We make sure that we have security built in and baked in into the architecture phase, so all the way into the beginning. That's something that we take care of. From an integrator perspective, and here's where it comes maybe a bit more gray or ad hoc, depending on the situation, but so the integrator, as I said, secures the implementation. That's all about the network segmentation. It's about the entity and access management that needs to be done. It's about the permission scheme that needs to be implemented. This operator can see source A, B, but another operator or supervisor has a different type of sources or set of sources that they can access. And then also they're responsible for including the features that we can offer as a product into the workflow. I'm thinking MFA, multi-factor authentication, and the likes. And then the last one is the end user. So the end user is responsible for securing their operations. So it's up to them, first and foremost, to apply our updates, security patches. It's up to them to when there's an incident, that they report it to us so that we can fix it and that they can return to their security posture after the patch. And it's also up to them to define a risk framework that they will allow or that they're comfortable with. And then the last thing I wanted to say is in EU, for instance, there's a directive which is called the PLD, the Product Lifecycle Directive, that basically states as soon as you have a security vulnerability, it's up to the vendor. Like I say, we secure the product. It's up to the vendor to make sure that there's a patch for that specific vulnerability and that we will fix it. As soon as we do, and as soon as we put it out there to be downloaded and applied and installed, then the liability shifts from the vendor to the end user or the partner, again, depending on the situation. So that's a very strong statement, but also directive, that the vendor is responsible for the product, but as soon as our patches are out, it's up to the end user, up to the partner to actually install them, apply them, and make sure that the system as such is secure again.
That's a lot of information. So yes, you really need to make sure you've got all of your ducks in a row and understand that flow and how each component, the responsibility and how that lies and that's laid out.
Definitely. If you could give one piece of advice to business leaders who don't consider themselves technical when it comes to cybersecurity, what would it be?
I would say exactly that. It's not up to you to understand all the nitty-gritty technical details, but as a business leader, you need to understand the business risk of cybersecurity, the risk that you run by not having a secure system or secure processes in place. So you might compare it to a seat belt, for instance, or car safety. In a seat belt, it's not the idea that as a business leader you know how much force you can take and so on, and what materials the belts are being made of. That's irrelevant for a business leader. What you do need to know is, does my organization, my car, does it have a seat belt?
Yeah.
Did we test it? Like, if you pull this, did we test it, and can does it fit to our security posture and our risk assessment? And then last but not least, do all my employees know about it, and do they use it? So that's basically what you need to take into account as a business leader. And then maybe to concretely round it off with 3 more suggestions. First one is, like I said before, compliance does not necessarily mean security. It provides you with minimum requirements, but make sure as a business leader to also ask or understand what the residual risk might be from not just being compliant, but also what are the other things that might still be open or be attacked. Make it a boardroom discussion. So that was all the way in the beginning. We talked about that it will be a boardroom discussion, but make it part of the agenda and also the decisions. And then last but not least, security, cybersecurity, consider it to be an ongoing journey and not a one and done type of project, and you're done with it. That's not going to be the case.
I love that seatbelt analogy as well. I'm going to use that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing this information. And just a quick plug, obviously, where can people find more additional information about everything that you've discussed, either if they're here at the show or if they're at home?
Yeah. So you can always reach us at www.barco.com. And for the show, we are currently for Barco control rooms at 8 booths. So I'm going to present you the main one, that's 5N, and then 390. That's a booth we have with our one of our integrators here, RPG.
Fantastic.
Hope to see you there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and just giving us all this information. It was so helpful, and we really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Matthieu.